All right, Penn State fans, Blue White Breakdown, mid-January edition, the freezing edition. Bob Flounders with Johnny McGonigal. We're recording this obviously from Johnny. You're in Philly. I'm in Harrisburg. The whole state's freezing, but that's what we're dealing with. How you doing? I know you were in Florida, but it was a tough week for us. I'm a Cowboys fan, you're an Eagles fan. Penn State fans don't want to hear that, right? They don't want to hear that. But it was one of the rockier weekends for me, probably for you as well. But hey, we're putting it behind us. There is so much Penn State news to get to that it's a nice distraction from what we had to watch on Sunday and Monday.
Who are the Philadelphia Eagles, Bob? I don't know. That was pathetic. It was pathetic watching that game against the Bucs, and I'm sure you felt similarly watching the Cowboys get dusted by the Packers. Shout out to Audrey Snyder and Daniel.
Yeah, I was just going to say now I'm going to have to deal with that.
And Rich Scarcella.
Yeah, but Rich is way better about it than Audrey.
I'm sure I would be surprised if she wasn't texting you during the game about it.
Hey, I'm happy for her. I mean, they I don't want to say they're a dangerous team, but at some point real soon they're going to be a dangerous team. Kudos to them. Sean Clifford even got into the game. It was so bad for Dallas. So, yeah. Hey, they deserve what they get. I hope there's a coaching change. But speaking of change, Johnny, I got a lot to talk to you about, but why don't we just start with what just became official today. It's Wednesday. Justin Lustig is the official replacement for Stacy Collins, special teams coordinator. All three Penn State coordinators that started 2023 no longer with the team. I don't know where you prioritize special teams coordination, but I will say this. I thought Stacy Collins did a really nice job with Penn State special teams in 2023. Dangerous in the return game. Riley Thompson was a very good punter. They didn't give up much in kickoff coverage. So I think it is a very important hire for a team that needs to get it right in all three phases.
Yeah, Bob. I think maybe the only knock against Stacy Collins in his 2 years is that he didn't go to Daquan Hardy sooner as a punt returner. But obviously recognizing what Daquan had and putting him an opportunity to succeed, and he did succeed this past season. You mentioned Riley Thompson, the FAU transfer who came in, did a really nice job punting the ball. Getting Alex Falcons in as a Columbia walk-on transfer, and he was second team All Big Ten last year. And it feels weird saying last year, Bob. It doesn't feel like we're in 2024 yet, but we are. And I always have to remind myself of that. But Stacy's 2 years, I mean, you saw progression and improvement from the special teams unit. He leaves to go back to Boise State, which is where he came from, and he's a West Coast guy. I guess Boise isn't necessarily West Coast, but I don't know what you would call it. A lot of
his guy. He's a Northwest.
Yeah, just up in that corner, up in that area. That's where he's from. That area. That's where he's coached the vast majority of his career. It was kind of an anomaly for him to come this far east of Penn State ahead of the 2022 season. But they end up hiring Justin Lustig from Vanderbilt. I believe he'll also coach outside linebackers, which what Stacy Collins did. He'll also coach the nickel corners, which is an interesting little wrinkle in there. But what are your thoughts on Justin and from what you've seen just from his resume? And I guess you would trust James to hire a good special teams coordinator as he did with Stacy Collins.
Yeah, and there was something on social media. One of the first people who had kind of had this news said that James had his eye on him before. I think he had been looking at this guy for a while. He's been a special teams coordinator pretty much his whole coaching life. If you look at all the stops he's been, he's had some other titles, but he's been a guy that coordinates the special teams. Pennsylvania guy from Erie, went to Bucknell, played defensive back. I think James really does value special teams. A lot of coaches just talk about it, but I don't know that some of the coaches really put a premium on it. I think he does. I think they really do help they help Penn State, especially when they play good defense. Guy sounds like he's very solid. Vanderbilt special teams in 2023. I think they had a first team all SEC punter, second team all SEC long snapper, So overlooked part of the game. This guy has obviously done it for a long time. I think Penn State having Riley Thompson back is huge. They're going to have to settle on a place kicker they can trust. I thought Alex Felkins actually, I know he had a block in the Peach Bowl, but, if you look at what he did as the season went on, he wasn't really the guy at the start of the year, but he kind of won that job, was very steady. I think he was one of their better, most surprising players. And it's an overlooked part of the game. But I do think this is a good hire. I'm interested to see what he'll do. The one thing Penn State really hasn't really been able to consistently do is they got the punt return game going, but kick return, with the way the rules are, it's kind of hard to get big returns. They could do anything in that phase of the game. We'll see about that. But I think it's a solid hire. Be curious to see what they do at place kicker in spring and in fall, because they do need to find somebody. Now that the Big Ten's getting tougher and tougher, they're going to need somebody who can make pressure kicks.
Yeah, well, you talk about a guy coming from Vanderbilt. I mean, look, Vanderbilt's had a rough time in the SEC. They know how to punt. And so it's one of those where I'm sure Justin Lustig is very adept to mentor Riley Thompson, who might not need much mentoring, to be honest with you, with the way that he performed in 2023. You mentioned the place kicking battle that's going to take place this offseason. Spring camp is in a couple months, and it'll really heat up from then all the way to the start of the season, because we saw that happen last year where Sanders Sahadak, handled the first half against West Virginia, missed a couple makeable kicks. Felkins comes in and kind of rolls with it from there. Sahadak is back, and they brought in Chase Meyer from Tulsa, who I believe made 17 20 field goals last year. He's a preferred walk-on. And then they also have Ryan Barker, who's a walk-on as well within the program. And so those three guys will be competing for that spot upcoming. And, Chase Meyer was one of 6 FBS transfers that Penn State confirmed and enrolled already, ahead of winter workouts. And, the spring semester started last week for Penn State. So that was important to get over the line. And I'm sure we'll talk about a few more of those additions.
Yeah.
I think
we are going.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Johnny, before we get to the transfers, I think we got to give a shout out to Penn State men's basketball, right? I know we always talk about football exclusively. That was a really nice win for the Nittany Lions on Tuesday night. Mike Rhodes and the reshaped Penn State team upset number 11 Wisconsin in-state college. Tight game, high-scoring game. They pulled away late. Fans stormed the court. I know you put something on PennLive about that. But as someone, during my formative years at the Patriot News, I remember Mike Rhodes as a player in this area, a Division III player, a star. And I know he's worked really hard to become the coach that he is now at Penn State. I think it's a big win for him. He clearly knows what he's doing. I'm sure you caught either most of that game or you caught the highlights, but just your thoughts on kind of what that means for Penn State and for him to get that kind of win against a really good Wisconsin team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's Penn State's first win over a top 15 team in 3 years. They did it back in January of 2021 against Wisconsin, beating them at home 81-71. And so they do it again, last night as we record this Wednesday afternoon. The court storming, love to see it. And there's like a court storming police out there on social media. And, when you do that, when you're Penn State and you were 8-9 going into that game, bottom rung, in the Big Ten. And it was understood that this was going to be a rebuilding year for Mike Rhodes in his first year as the head coach, taking over for Micah Shrewsbury after they made the tournament last year. So much talent leaves, and they brought in some talent as well. Ace Baldwin coming in from VCU scores 20 against Wisconsin. Kanye Clary, I think, has really developed into a nice player, and putting up 27, 4, and 3 against the number 11 team in the country. It was a good environment. I wasn't there, but watching on TV, I know the students got in for free. It was a snow day. I heard it was half-price chicken baskets there.
I saw that press conference,
That's always a vibe. You love to hear that. And so, a really good result, for Mike Rhodes and his program in the early stages of what seems to be, what is a rebuild for Penn State basketball.
Yeah, happy to see it. Let's see how they do moving forward. I know they were at the Palestra a little while ago. I think they beat Michigan, and Michigan's a little bit down this year, but still, that's a school and a win that is a feather in their cap. It's never going to be easy in the Big Ten. We'll see how the season plays out, but good for them. Quality win. Hopefully they can build off of it. Johnny, let's get back to the transfer portal here on the Blue White Breakdown. And we talked a little bit about it. You mentioned they added 6 players. It's going to be determined in the spring and especially in August, what their roles are going to be and what their impact's going to be. But as you look at it right now, who in your mind, there's an easy answer, but I'm not sure it's the right answer. Given what they lost at some other positions, who do you think is maybe who could be the most important addition in the transfer portal for Penn State?
Yeah, I think you alluded to the easy answer being Julian Fleming, the Ohio State wide receiver, former Southern Columbia star, number 1 player in Pennsylvania. Penn State really wanted him. He comes in after 4 years in Columbus, and is maybe the best receiver like right away, and he's an obvious impact candidate. One quick note on the wide receiver room as it pertains to and everything else. It seems like Keandre Lambert-Smith is going to be back. The winter transfer portal window closed last week, and afterwards he was put on the updated 2024 roster. The declaration day for the NFL draft has come and gone, and no news on Keandre. So at the very least, he'll be here for winter workouts and spring camp.
Right.
He tweeted out something the other day with regards to Penn State's NIL collective saying, we are, I think it was we are back or back to work. I think it was. And so that's that's a nice piece of news for your leading receiver in 2023 who his role was very much diminished down the stretch, only had 2 catches in the final 4 games, dropped his only target in the Peach Bowl. But still, you look at this wide receiver room and Julian Fleming is going to come in there and elevate the play of that room that frankly struggled last season. And so, but the one that I point to would be AJ Harris. And Jalen Kimber's in there too. 2 corners from the SEC. Kimber started 11 games for Florida last year. AJ Harris was a 5-star in the 2023 class, played in, I believe, 7 games for Georgia this past season. And he's looking for playing time elsewhere, and it's a stacked secondary down there in Athens. So I don't necessarily blame him for entering the portal and looking for playing time elsewhere. But, we saw what happened in the Peach Bowl, and those were kind of difficult circumstances for Cam Miller and for Zion Tracy and Elliott Washington, those guys who had to step up after Kalen King and Johnny Dixon opted out. Those 2 were off to the NFL, as well as Daquan Hardy in the slot at nickel. So it's a very intriguing corner room, Bob. It's a very intriguing corner room for Terry Smith to work out. And I think AJ Harris has an abundance of talent to work with. Kimber has a lot of experience actually starting his career at Georgia and ending up in Florida and now in Happy Valley. And so I think those 2 have a pretty clear path to early playing time. And I know Cam Miller will have a lot to say about that in the coming months, but I think those were 2 obvious, or it was an obvious need at corner that they wanted to get more competition in there. And so for them to get that over the line, before the portal closed and get them enrolled in classes and ahead of winter workouts, I think is a big deal for them.
Yeah, I think especially Harris, again, coming from Georgia, being a 5-star, you just got to let it play out. I just remember I'm a little hesitant when it comes to the transfer portal. Penn State, when it comes to, defensive ends, transfer portal defensive ends, I feel good about those guys because they've been able to develop them. Hunter Norzad is a great transfer portal story. Mitchell Tinsley was as well, but they've also had after. I just remember Cephas last year, right? I thought I know that he wasn't quite the recruit that Fleming was, and Fleming is a Pennsylvania kid. Little bit hesitant, just want to see it, and also I do remember Penn State was really, really high on Storm Duck last year. The corner from North Carolina came in. Now the corner room was loaded, and maybe Storm Duck saw the writing on the wall, and he transferred out right after spring. But I just think we're going to need to be a little bit patient with these guys and see how they fit in. They're not. Chances are not all of them are going to work out. If they do all work out, hey, good for Penn State. But I would say the corner. I'm leaning in the direction of the corner room ads being a little bit more important than the wide receiver ad, but it could go any number of ways. I think it's going to be a fascinating offseason for Penn State. You mentioned Keandre Lambert-Smith, and I don't even know what to think about him anymore. We've seen the best of him in the Rose Bowl against West Virginia. He had a big catch against Indiana, but we've also seen him literally in witness protection program, and I don't know what that means, Johnny. So we're going to wait. I was going to ask you. We talked about the transfer portal. There were a few players from Penn State that made decisions to come back, and I wanted to ask you. So Keandre Lambert-Smith, we're assuming he's going to be back. How would you weigh him coming back with the news that Hakeem Beamon and Devon Ellies are coming back? I think really, Keandre Lambert-Smith is a talented player, but given the defensive tackle room, I'm not sure that those two guys coming back is more important.
Yeah, I think Ellies in particular. I mean, he had 5 tackles for loss last year. Yeah. He's a leader in the locker room. You lose some of those captains. Olu Fashanu was a captain. Theo Johnson was a captain. Adisa Isaac. And so every year there's always turnover when it comes to the leadership in the locker room. And I think Ellies, is going to be a captain for this team in 2024. And I think that's really big. Zane Durant, I thought, played really well as a sophomore at defensive tackle, establishing himself as a starter. You look at the portal, Bob, they have a lot of bodies in that defensive tackle room right now, and a handful that I don't think are going to see the field for Penn State in 2024, maybe even 2025. And so you look at the scholarship situation with Penn State right now. I did a big breakdown position by position where their scholarships are allocated right now heading into winter workouts and spring ball. And they're at 99 total, and they need to get to 85 by the time the season starts. The portal reopens for 15 days on April 15th. And so I think you're going to see an exodus of fringe players from this roster come the spring. And I think a few of them could come from defensive tackle. I think a couple more could still come from the wide receiver room. But Keandre Lambert-Smith, at least for right now, is not going to be one of those. Stating that he's ready to work. And it's just an interesting case with him because, after the Ohio State loss, the wide receiver that we talked to after that game was Caden Saunders. And I know he's from Columbus and he had a touchdown late in that game. So maybe it was easy just to throw him out there. Keandre was touted as the number one wide receiver in the room, going back to the offseason, all offseason, all last spring. And we didn't talk to him before the Peach Bowl. I went up to him in the locker room, in the open locker room after the Peach Bowl, when we have 20 minutes to talk to players, and if you played in the game, you're available to talk. And he declined comment. He declined to answer any questions. And it's just at that point, I honestly thought, okay, like he's probably leaving. He's probably going to enter the portal, or maybe he's just going to test the NFL waters and see what's what. So I was frankly a little surprised that things were quiet on the Keandre front coming into as the portal kind of came to its close in the winter. So he's still a talented player, and like you mentioned, we saw the best of him against Indiana in the Rose Bowl, even early in the season. That 72-yard, the West Virginia game. So he has those bursts, he has those big plays in there. But then you watch throughout the season, and there are plays that. Either the communication is off between him and Drew. It's just, I think he had a rough close this season, to say the least. And maybe new offensive coordinator Andy Kotelnicki will be able to put him in better positions to make an impact and be, it's tough to say like a more important receiver because he led them in receiving yards and receptions this year. But I don't think you saw the best of him on a consistent basis, and perhaps Kotelnicki will be able to unlock that in him. Who knows?
Yeah. Very interesting player. And you're right. You mentioned the scholarships and where they're at. The numbers don't add up right now. So there's going to be some movement, and some significant movement at Penn State, probably either at the very conclusion of spring or, not long after, because the numbers they just have too many kids. It's it's going on all across the country. It's a huge spring for the wideout room and some other positions, but we'll keep an eye on that. I wanted to give a special shout out to somebody at the end of our podcast, but before I get to that, I just have been thinking about this for a while, and I want to get your take because I bet you're going to agree with me. So we just saw Michigan cap a tremendous season, win a national championship in impressive fashion against Washington. You had said at the start of the semifinal playoff you thought they were going to emerge. I certainly had my doubts. I thought Alabama was going to emerge, and I think that maybe it might have been that semifinal might have been actually, I think the winner of that game was probably going to win just because of the athletes they have. But having said that, kudos to Michigan. My question to you is, given what's gone on since the end of the bowl season, is there another Big Ten team sitting on a national championship year in the state of Ohio? Because I just think what's going on inside the Buckeyes program with who they've been able to add and who they've been able to keep. I can read the list of the players, but this team clearly is not happy with how, and the program's not happy with how things have gone against Michigan the last couple of years. They had a boatload of NFL talent that could have declared for the NFL draft, but has not. Marvin Harrison did, but there's 6, 7, 8 players that are coming back. I can read the list off, but Johnny, with what they've done, how tough is Ohio State going to be if they stay healthy in 2024?
Yeah, I mean, the key there is healthy, as it is with every team, Bob.
Yeah.
But, you look at what they're bringing back. Travion Henderson decides not to leave. JT Tuimoloau off the edge decides not to leave. And the guy who, JT has been a guy that people have said for the last 2 years, like he's a first-round talent.
Yep.
I don't think he's consistently put it together, but he seemingly always does against Penn State. And, of course,
he sure does.
Ohio State is on the schedule next year. They bring in Quinshon Judkins from Ole Miss, the running back who had over 100 yards against Penn State in the Peach Bowl. And so, and then with Will Howard at quarterback, and they I don't know if force out is the right word, but Kyle McCord leaves the portal to go to Syracuse. And Emeka Egbuka is back at receiver. So they, with Brian Hartline, they're going to have talent at receiver. But it feels like this team is kind of built more to play like Michigan, to run the ball a little bit more. I mean, the fact that Henderson is coming back, even with Judkins in the fold, suggests that they are committed to running the ball next year. And then you look at what else is coming into the Big Ten. In Oregon, and Washington is on the schedule. USC is on the schedule for Penn State next year. And Michael Penix and Caleb Williams won't be back for those two respective teams, but you look at the way they like to play. I think it was really important to go get A.J. Harris and Jalen Kimber from the transfer portal and shore up that cornerback room. So it's a difficult slate for Penn State next year. We all knew it would be when the schedule came out. And honestly, when those 4 teams were confirmed as coming into the Big Ten, that it was going to be a tougher conference slate for the Nittany Lions. But with the 12-team playoff and everything, I still have a good feeling that Penn State will be able to get that done. I know that's a conversation for another day and not on January 17th. Sure. But the Buckeyes are going to be difficult, as they always are, and they've been Penn State's boogeyman. And Ryan Day just that roster is loaded, Bob. Yeah,
Jack Sawyer back. Defensive tackle, Tyleik Williams back, top corner, Denzel Burke back. I mean, that Judkins-Henderson pairing, if they're both healthy, running behind an offensive line that's always good. Like Judkins, I don't think really had a great offensive line this year, but you look what he's done in the SEC. You saw some of those runs against Penn State. They kind of ganged up on him there at the end, but he made some spectacular runs. This Ohio State team, if they're healthy, and Will Howard can kind of fit into what they want to do. Not a lot of weak spots in the Buckeyes. I know Penn State fans really don't want to hear that, but I hope they are paying attention to how Ohio State is there's different ways, right, to build a team. And to get everyone to not go to the NFL when they could go to the NFL is a very creative way to do that. I don't know that every program can do that, but I think Ohio State has the quote-unquote resources to keep those players in Columbus. So we'll see how that pans out. Johnny, before we wrap this up, I think we both, I want to put a smile on your face. How about Billy Fessler? the former Penn State quarterback, played on the 2016 team in a reserve role. Joe Moorhead always spoke very highly of him and what he meant to the offense, even though he didn't play. He was his OC at Akron this year, and now he's headed to UCLA to do the same thing. Joe Moorhead told me over the summer that he's eventually going to be a head coach. He pay no attention to what Akron did on the field this year. They were kind of hamstrung by injuries and talent. But to see Billy Fessler get his chance at such a young age at a school like UCLA, I know Penn State's going to see him, I think really speaks to what he's capable of. And I'm fascinated to watch his coaching career kind of progress.
Joe Moorhead's going to have to be the honorary captain for the game when UCLA comes and plays at Penn State in the fall, because it'll be a really cool homecoming too, I'm sure, for Billy Fessler, who was a walk-on quarterback, really never sniffed the field, especially with Trace, and Tommy Stevens was in the fold. Sean Clifford was a young pup at that point, but he was integral though to Penn State's success in 2016, 2017. Behind the scenes, working with those quarterbacks in that room on a day-to-day basis, calling in signals on game day, that kind of thing. And to see his growth has been really cool. And I know you got to spend some time out in Akron with Joe. Joe,
beautiful city,
just the best. And really just a great guy too. And
sure,
it's pretty cool to see Billy Fessler get this pub and get this promotion and be on the up. So things you love to see: half price chicken baskets at the Bryce Jordan Center, and Billy Fessler doing his thing.
Yeah, just real quick, when I talked to Billy, he said it was a defining moment for him. He was, I think, in business at Penn State. Really, really bright guy. Did an internship in Chicago. He said, he thought he was going to get an offer at a prestigious firm and make a lot of money. In a completely different world. And he kind of paused and just thought about what he really wanted to do. And he said what he really wanted to do was be a coach, in football and in the college game, an offensive mind. And that's impressive in this day and age, to really kind of forego, I don't want to say a sure financial thing, because, you don't know how it's going to work out, but to go the hard road, to pay your dues, and to see it kind of hopefully work out. I mean, he's at he's at a Big Ten program, under Chip Kelly, to do what he's doing. Really happy for him, because I don't know how many people really would have made that decision, but I think it speaks to him, his character, and how determined and how hardworking he is to make that decision, and less than 10 years later, see it pay off. I'm happy for Billy Fessler. I don't know him that well, but I talked to him for about 25 minutes. Very impressed with him. And I think it's really a nice story, and hopefully that story continues.
Absolutely. No, and look, the story will continue for Penn State's offseason here, Bob, in the coming weeks. And obviously this won't be our last podcast. We'll be back on a weekly basis, touching base. And again, I mentioned spring camp is right around the corner. I mean, it's a couple months away, and it's going to be a proving ground. You talk about Billy Fessler proving himself through the ranks. I mean, the next few months are going to be, a proving ground for a lot of players on Penn State's roster. We talked about the scholarship situation that Penn State's in right now. It's not an issue. Like, it's not a thing to worry about if you're a Penn State fan, them getting to 85, James Franklin and staff and coaches across the country are doing kind of the same thing, especially at big programs like Penn State. So you're going to see players step up, and the little nuggets of information that we get, Bob, in terms of like, okay, here's a sophomore who was like a fifth stringer last year, but he's playing well. Like, those are things really to keep an eye on over the next coming, the coming months, because that portal is going to open up again on April 15th, and expect quite a few departures.
Yep. All right, guys, we'll be back next week. Johnny, stay warm. I'll try and do the same. Enjoy the playoffs, even though our teams aren't going to be in it. It's still a fun time of year. Guys, we'll be back next week.